very much for having me here. When I heard you were having this rally, I just had to be here. Dr. Kermit Gosnell is serving 3 life sentences for delivering babies alive and then cutting their necks with scissors. And he did it for decades. The grand jury believed that he killed thousands in that particular way. I got involved in this story when I heard the testimony of the abortion doctors who were asked to explain what a legal abortion was in a courtroom in Philadelphia. Their testimony and the evidence that was presented in Gosnell's trial is the most powerful picture of abortion in the United States that exists. One doctor, for example, was asked, "So, how many abortions have you performed like in your career?" And the jury gasped when the answer was 40,000. It wasn't the last time that they gasped. Another doctor, abortion doctor, was asked on the stand, "What happens if a baby is born alive?" And the answer was, "Well, you know, really, we just keep it warm. Eventually it will pass." I can translate that for you. They call it comfort care. It's called neglecting a child to death. And it's legal. It's legal. It's perfectly legal. Another doctor was asked during Gosnell's trial to describe a legal late-term abortion. And the testimony was, well, you're basically pulling out an arm or a leg or something like that. During the trial, Jimmy Johnson, the janitor, was on the stand and he was asked, "Well, what did you do?" "Well, I was very busy," he said, "because the toilets got clogged." And they said, "Clogged with what?" And they said, "Well, bits. Bits of what?" "Well, like arms and legs." And the world's journalists, and especially American mainstream journalists, did not think that that was a story worth reporting every day. You probably heard of Michael Brown. Everyone's heard of Michael Brown. In Ireland, everyone knows Michael Brown. But no one in Ireland, and no one around the world, knows the name of Samika Shaw, a young African-American mother who died because of an abortion at Gosnell's clinic. Her name is not a household name. Why is that? You know the answer of why her name is not known. You know the answer to this. That's why I did this. I have now, as you heard, I have now made a movie. I've written a book. We had a play in New York. And the most recent thing we've done, and I need your help here, and I'm going to ask the guys at the back to put it up here. We have made a 6-part true crime podcast about Gosnell, interviewing the detectives, interviewing victims, interviewing the prosecutors. There is a QR code up there. Here's what you have to do for me. You have to take the QR code, you have to listen to the podcast, 6 episodes, and you have to share it. Particularly young people love true crime podcasts. This true crime podcast, when it came out, it was in the top 10 of true crime podcasts around the world. The story is extraordinary. They tried so much, journalists tried so hard to cover up this story. And you know why they wanted to cover up this story? Because they don't want people to know the truth about abortion. Because when you know the truth, you're not the same afterwards. It's easy to talk about Planned Parenthood. It's not easy to talk about arms and legs being pulled out. But that's the reality. And the reason I really wanted to be here in Harrisburg, and this is really, really important. Many of you may talk to people and talk about Gosnell, and people will say to you, well, he's an outlier, he's an outlier. Shut up! And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why he's not an outlier. It is illogical that he is an outlier. I will tell you why. We are in progressive Pennsylvania, We are in progressive Harrisburg. It doesn't get more progressive than this. There's a Department of Health in this town. Thousands of people work there. Thousands. Over 1,000 people work there. Gosnell operated for decades. During those decades, Carnamaya Monger died, a Bhutanese refugee. Samika Shaw, a young African-American mother, died. And the people who work in Harrisburg, in the Department of Health, did not leave their desk. They did not leave their desks to investigate. They did not think it was worthwhile to get off. I'm from Ireland. Give me a glass of wine and you'll hear some awful language. They did not think it was worthwhile to get off their backsides and go and investigate the death of these two women in progressive Pennsylvania. And those women represent populations that apparently are really important to progressives. African Americans and refugees. A refugee died and they didn't investigate. And you know what? They still don't care, and I'm going to prove it to you. And by the way, I'll tell you who's also to blame for Gosnell. A Republican governor called Tom Ridge is responsible for Gosnell. A Republican governor is responsible for Gosnell. He came into power on a pro-choice ticket and immediately instructed the Department of Health to go easy on inspections, not to do anything that might interrupt a woman's right to choose. And sometimes people say, you know, this thing with the Department of Health and the Department of State here in Pennsylvania is a conspiracy. It's much worse than that. It's much worse than a conspiracy. It's a consensus. It's a consensus. They will do anything to protect abortion. And I am going to prove it to you. When we did this podcast, it's a 6-episode podcast. You are going to download it. You are going to listen to it. Promise me you will do that. Promise me you will share it with every young person you've ever met. I'm watching and I'm looking. Oh, and leave a 5-star review. For this podcast, we interviewed everyone involved in the Gosnell case. And we brought the prosecutor, Christine Wexler, to the clinic. And we stood outside at 3801 Lancaster. And Christine said, look over there. I think the door is open. Now, Christine was an assistant district attorney. She's a lawmaker. She's not going to be doing anything illegal. But I'm a journalist, unlike a lot of people who call themselves journalists. We went in there. The place has not changed. There is a smell of death. Gosnell's pornography is still in his office desk. But when you go through the clinic, guys at the back, can you put up a photograph for me, please? Are we seeing this photograph? That is file upon file upon file upon file of women who had abortions at Gosnell's clinic. Talk to me about their HIPAA rights. Talk to me about HIPAA. That's how much the Department of Health in Pennsylvania, in progressive Pennsylvania, care about privacy. Those files have women's telephone numbers, their addresses, the number of abortions they've had, and most importantly as well, they left a picture up there still. Take a photograph of that and share it everywhere, and ask the Department of Health in Pennsylvania why they don't care about these women. Why don't they care about these women's privacy? It's appalling. And if there's any journalists out there, this is a story that I reported months ago. And they're still there, those files. They just don't care. I'm coming to the end. Oh my God, very good. I'm doing really well here. My last thing to say to you, and I'm going to sit down and think, oh my God, I wish I'd said all this other stuff to them. Love you guys. Thank you so much for having me here. If Gosnell can happen in progressive Pennsylvania, Gosnell can happen anywhere. It is illogical. It's illogical to believe there isn't a Gosnell in California. It's illogical to think that there's not a Gosnell in Illinois, in New Jersey. It's illogical. Tell me the logic. Why would you think he wouldn't? For the years and years and years that he was working in Pennsylvania, 3801 Lancaster, the complaints that went to the Department of Health in Harrisburg piled up to the ceiling, and they never inspected for 17 years. Shame on them. They'd be better off asking, this is what I've always said, and I'm going to go. I've always said, if you picked up 2 or 3 random strangers and had them run the Department of Health in Harrisburg, you would do better for the health of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania than this crowd did.
Thank you, Anne, for your honesty in the hard things. Wow. All right, everyone. We are just